We're delighted to welcome Dr. Janice Underwood to This Week in Virginia. Since September 2019, Dr. Underwood has been the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the Commonwealth of Virginia, coming from ODU, where you worked in this same arena with undergraduates at Hampton University, and then also some your graduate work, your PhD, I think, at ODU. So we're delighted to have you, and people have gotten acquainted with you, but maybe not with everyone on your dream team, as they are known around Capitol Square. So please, starting with your chief deputy, introduce them to us, and perhaps if each one of them wants to say something at this time about their experience too. So the show is you on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, David, thank you so much for having me and this dream team. I'm so excited to introduce to the Commonwealth of Virginia again. It truly is the professional honor of my career to work with these DEI champions. And so, as you know, I'm the Chief Diversity Officer to Governor Northam, and I'd like to I'll briefly introduce each one, and I'll just ask, to your point, that they say a couple of words. We have Alaysia Black Hackett, who serves as the Deputy Diversity Officer. She's the lead deputy. We have Mona Siddiqui, who is the Deputy Diversity Officer, as well as Senior Policy Advisor to the Office of New Americans. We have Yewande Austin, who is the Special Advisor to the Chief Diversity Officer, and Mikaela Swann, Executive Assistant to the Chief Diversity Officer. So pleased to have you. And in that order, please do say a few words.
Hello and good afternoon. Happy New Year to everyone. And thank you so much, David, for inviting the entire Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We are excited to be on this journey with Dr. Janice Underwood in the governor's office. Of course, we're hitting the ground running. So again, I'm Alaysia Black Hackett. Previous to my position here at the governor's office, I had the ability to serve as actually the special assistant borrowed to Dr. Janice Underwood. And then before then, I was at the Department of Human Resource Management as a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. But prior to coming into Virginia government, I was a chief director of diversity, equity, and inclusion at a university in North Carolina. So I've spent almost 20 years in executive leadership within institutions of higher learning. Went to law school and decided that I wanted to change my career path to government. So I'm here. I'm passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm passionate about policy. And I absolutely love being on this dream team of dismantling systemic racism in the Commonwealth. I believe we can be the examples for other states. So I'm excited to be on this journey. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, David. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Mona Siddiqui, and I am also Deputy Chief Diversity Officer, as well as Senior Policy Advisor for the Office of New Americans. Virginia is the 10th state in the nation to have a statewide Office of New Americans. And through the partnership of this Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Department of Social Services, our focus is to promote and enhance immigrant integration for new Americans who choose to make their home in Virginia. And so I'll be working very closely on that initiative, as well as with the entire dream team on the other issues under the leadership of Dr. Underwood. So I'm very excited to be here. I am also an attorney by profession, coming from the AG's office, and had the privilege to work on several immigration-related lawsuits that advocated for reducing the harms to immigrant communities. So this is a great opportunity to work on more equity issues in a more systemic way through the Commonwealth. So very excited to be here.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Yewande Austin, Special Advisor to Dr. Underwood. An honor to serve this great state under Governor Northam's leadership and Dr. Underwood. Prior to this position, I led a capacity building consultancy. For the past 16 years, we've produced DEI programs in 30 countries around the world, but truly one of my greatest honors has been to come on board with this dream team to ensure that equity is embedded in every service and in every part of the Commonwealth of Virginia to ensure that residents have all of the resources that they need to thrive.
Hey, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. As Dr. Underwood stated, my name is Mikaela Swann, and I serve as the Executive Administrator to Dr. Underwood in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm grateful to be here this evening, this afternoon, be able to speak with you. Thank you, Mr. Bailey, for reaching out to us. I am the youngest of the bunch. I'm a recent graduate of Howard University. And I have done extensive studies about global health disparities throughout my time in undergrad. So I'm able to broaden my knowledge of DEI working under the phenomenal Dr. Underwood. Great to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. You know, other than having met Dr. Underwood, you're the one that I've talked with the most. I say talked with. We have emailed, and thank you so much, Mikaela, for helping line up this opportunity to hear from this dream team, which is a dream team, but it's also a team in reality. I like the name Dream Team, but it's not just a dream. And Dr. Underwood, if I understand correctly, going back to September of 19, and maybe even right now in January of 21, Virginia is the only state to have someone in a cabinet position of the work that you're doing. And I have found that to be interesting because in my research, preparing to have a chance to hear from you all, it's been amazing to me the number of colleges, universities around the world, not just in Americas, that have someone in the position that some of you have served in previously, at least two of you, but states don't. And
Well, David, you're spot on with that observation. What we know for sure is that Virginia's leading the way. Virginia is truly serving as a case study for the nation, and that is my ultimate goal. You're correct in the assessment that the Commonwealth of Virginia is the first state in the nation to have a true cabinet level chief diversity officer, and that credit goes to Governor Northam. He saw fit that Virginia was ready, especially being the birthplace of American slavery, the capital of the Confederacy. It was time to have these conversations and reckon with the structural inequity and structural racism that's been embedded into the fabric of our society. Virginia is also the birthplace of representative government, right? And so we also know that in ways where we haven't sort of been champions for all in diversity, equity, inclusion, it's time that we were. And so, his leadership has been to be first, but not to be the last, right? And so part of my charge, which by the way has been codified, my role has been codified in the Virginia Code, is to bring diversity, equity, inclusion to the Commonwealth of Virginia, but also to go across state lines and really reach across the aisle to states, all states who are interested in doing this work. And we saw a resurgence in creating a chief diversity officer in the private sector, in colleges, in nonprofits, and in states. And so just recently, this shows you just how timely this was. See, Virginia created this role in 2019, but in 2020, at the end of 2020, Indiana created a quasi example of my position, of this position here in Virginia. And so we know that with Indiana just starting the process, we know that means any and everybody can do it, whether you have a D behind your name or an R behind your name. This work is about humanity and about making sure that we make sure that the promise for equality under the law, that equality for all, is realized.
the other thing that I discovered, and I'm try to learn before having a chance to talk with key people such as you all. The letters, capital letters, DEI. I mean, if someone Googles DEI, they find out about this. So now, the people that you work with in the Commonwealth, hopefully they understand what the D and the E and the I stand for. But Dr. Underwood or any members of your team, for our viewers, when you say diversity, what do you mean? When you say equity, when you say inclusion, what they each have their separate meanings, but flesh it out a little bit for us.
Yeah, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they are very much related terms, but with very different meanings, right? Interrelated, but very different. And I would just suggest that the E for equity is probably the most important one. But I'm going to turn it over to Alaysia. Alaysia, do you want to talk a little bit about DEI and what they mean? And as Alaysia knows, that there are also, David, so many different variations. Some people say DEI, EDI, IED, DEIJ, David, for justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And
Yes.
so these are all different constructs, but very related. Alaysia, are you there?
Yes, I am. And I definitely concur with Dr. Underwood. There are so many variations. It's really, when you look at diversity, it's not something that can really be defined because it's so broad, right? There are so many levels to, being able to describe what diversity means. But ultimately, for what we do, we utilize diversity to talk about an environment that fosters collaboration and inclusivity by recognizing the effectively utilization of talent, skills, and perspectives. In doing so, we build and create unified and high performances throughout whatever organization and how you utilize it. Equity, as Dr. Underwood says, is the most important. I know we've seen a lot of the pictures that have equality where everybody is on the same level, but equity is basically fairness. It is giving an individual or a group of people what is needed to give them the access to utilize in order to be successful in the work that they're doing or in whatever environment. So, it's not equality because there could be someone who is disabled with a wheelchair and they need a ramp. They do not need stairs. And so we have to ensure that equity is providing those resources that's required so that everyone can contribute and be successful in what they're doing. And then we have inclusion. Inclusion is described as the active and intentional engagement of an individual, regardless of who they are, what their demographic assignment is, or their race, gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, their sexual orientation. It does not matter. The inclusion means that everyone is part of what we're doing from the conception of what we're doing. And so in this, when you bring all that together, it really is dismantling systems that have in the past been not as inclusive as it should have been, and have not been written from a place of embracing diversity or ensuring that there are diverse lens sitting at the table, getting the understanding from what each particular group of people need. So our job is to go in and assist organizations, assist state agencies, assist legislators in ensuring and assuring that we are providing equitable and fair practices across the board, and that we are bringing everyone that we can think of to the table. And it's going to continue to evolve. Like I say all the time, diversity, equity, inclusion is not going anywhere. And DEI is not our genie in the bottle. We can't rub it just because we need it, or we need to look good, or we need to establish to get rumors out of the press. We have to ensure that this is part of what we do every day. So that's what we're doing. We're here to be part of the solution. We've spent many years building a place and an environment that's been exclusive and not equitable. So now we're here to build it from the ground up.
And David, really, diversity is basically the starting point. It's just making sure you leverage many different kinds of people with different kinds of lived experiences. And equity is how you get there, making sure everyone has what they need to be successful. Inclusion, it really just describes the active, intentional, and ongoing engagement with the diverse people and practices and lived experiences and communities, whether these are intellectual, social, cultural, geographical differences, in ways that increase one's cultural affirmation and sense of belonging. And so what we know is that diversity is only the starting point, but inclusive excellence is the goal. It's not so much to be invited to the party or invited to dance, because what if I don't like to dance the way that you like to dance? I should be expected to dance or contribute in the way that I can, if, provide, content knowledge and cognitive contributions and empathetic understanding of complex problems, and create innovative solutions. So you might like to dance at the party, but I might like to chair hustle and just sit in the corner, and that might be my dancing. And so that's where we're really pushing this idea of belonging and inclusive excellence.
I may add,
Yes,
I'd like to bring it back to, it all originates from the U.S. Constitution, the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, as well as the Virginia Constitution as well. And that is a guarantee that all Americans have equal treatment, equal opportunities, protection from unlawful discrimination. And I think the work that's being done in this office is actually operationalizing in an administrative way the values of our Constitution.
Yeah.
Well, now, when the governor introduced Dr. Underwood, I was looking back at his news release. He said you were charged with implementing a measurable strategic plan to address systemic inequities. And so I would ask you, I guess now more than 15 months, 16, 17 months into this work, is it something that you're able to do some measuring? Have we made some good steps, I guess is what I'm wanting you to speak to, in the little over a year that you all, and some of you haven't been on the job the entire year, but is it something that you can measure that is some good is happening?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's a really great question. I'd like to start by saying that structural racism is not something that's easy to measure.
Yeah.
It's so nebulous, and it once was thought to be like Jim Crow laws. You could measure those, and you know that the governor has, in the 2020 session, removed over 100 instances of racist language out of the Virginia Code. And that's a diversity win right there. And so that's measurable. But, structural racism now, which by the way makes all other inequity possible, is more nebulous. So it's more like James Crow Esquire now. But as you know, and as you mentioned, you can't change what you don't measure, and you can't measure that which you don't acknowledge. And so because the governor really showed leadership in creating this position and charged me to create that measurable plan, we are in the process, I'm so excited to share with you, David, of creating the One Virginia plan to advance not only diversity, which is just the starting point, but also inclusive excellence across all of our state agencies and state supported institutions, which include all of those colleges and universities that you mentioned earlier. And so in the coming year, we have several state agencies that have already committed to implementing the One Virginia plan. And we believe there are going to be many more that follow. So that's exactly what we've done in the last year. When Alaysia and I first sort of started together, it was just her and I. We were traveling around to make sure that everyone had a voice in what the One Virginia plan meant and was and included. And what we came to understand is that it's just 5 goals. If we could all get across and the idea of we're just going to measure 5 major things, just like you have 5 fingers on a hand, if we could all measure 5 things, not making it difficult, not making it sort of nebulous and don't know where to start, then we could probably move our organizations in the same direction towards inclusive excellence. In the same way you have 5 fingers on the hand, 5 goals in the One Virginia plan. And if you're doing more than 5 things, it's probably too much. But the One Virginia plan is, it will be debuting in January, and we're really excited about it. And that's that sustainable mechanism where if we can all just agree to measure 5 things and all be accountable for those 5 things, then we might be able to move in the right direction.
Oh, that's exciting. And I guess we'll be finding out about that in news releases and on the website. We'll put your website up that people can find that. And it leads me right into what I was about to ask, and I think you maybe have answered it. You're working with state agencies, you work with legislators. What about the rest of us? And it sounds like that One Virginia involves the rest of us.
Well, what we knew when I came on the scene was that I was the Chief Diversity Officer to Governor Northam, and my main priority was state government. What we learned, however, is that Virginia was thirsty and hungry for the Commonwealth's Chief Diversity Officer. So in many cases, I have become the Commonwealth's Chief Diversity Officer. And while state government is certainly my priority, our state agencies and state workforce, in collaboration with the Virginia Department of Human Resource Management, and really sort of in collaboration or elbow bumping with Emily Elliott, the director there, and Vilma Alejandro, the director of employee engagement there, we realized that there were so many other facets that we needed to build into the One Virginia plan, such as our private sector, that really, links into our procurement goals. If we want to increase procurement by Swann businesses, for example, small women and minority-owned businesses with our state agencies, then I needed to sort of expose our state agencies to those Swann businesses and really work in collaboration with that community. So I had to start becoming the Commonwealth's Chief Diversity Officer and talking to groups that were in public-private relationships or partnerships, nonprofit organizations, community activists, faith leaders, and really bring us together so that we could work towards that One Virginia mission. Because One Virginia is larger than just our state agencies. And what we've learned is that several of our private organizations, our local governments, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon with our health equity pilot program, where we have created a partnership with our local governments to hand out masks and hand sanitizer and public health information to more than 66 local governments. They said that they want, more information about how to create a Chief Diversity Officer role, for example. So I've been a consult to all that call Virginia home, that want to advance DEI.
You mentioned health equity, and I have to ask you to say something about something exciting that's worked out with a national figure coming into the Commonwealth to help address some of the concerns and the need for our being safer and our need for vaccinations. I'll tee it up and you tell us about it.
Well, I am so excited to share with you and your viewers that the Governor's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, in partnership with the Office of Health Equity at the Virginia Department of Health, with the Massey Cancer Center under the direction of Dr. Robert Wynn, are bringing Dr. Fauci to Virginia for a virtual event on Friday. And we want everyone to sign up, and please do. We'll make sure that you have the links and the flyer to show with to your audience. Log on by 2:45. We will be welcoming our VIP guests at 2:45, and we will be rocking and rolling at 3 o'clock. We know that there's so much misinformation out there about the vaccine and about coronavirus. And what we also know is that when people have questions, they want their questions answered. And so we're bringing together the top doctors in Virginia to also speak with our faith leaders and all leaders, community leaders, and residents. All residents get to speak with our top doctors and the nation's top doctor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who has been so gracious to spend an hour with us so that any Virginian who would like to ask a question can ask a question in real time.
Excellent, excellent. I wonder if we could get a little bit more information about this Office of New Americans, because I think that's interesting. Some of us are not the new Americans, but there are many new Americans in our communities throughout the Commonwealth, and I think you're ready to speak.
Sure, absolutely. So the purpose of the Office of New Americans, which became new law just this last July, so there's an Office of New Americans and there's also an Office of New Americans Advisory Board. And the role of both of these entities is to ensure the economic, linguistic, and civic integration of new Americans who choose to make their home in Virginia. And so my role in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is to ensure that the policies and practices that are set up in Virginia throughout the state agencies and secretariats enhance opportunities for immigrants settling here, whether it is in the area of education, in transportation, in housing, workforce development, and sort of across all spectrums of state government to make sure that it is sort of, if you want to use the word seamless, so the barriers that immigrants often face when coming into a new system, language barriers and other types of barriers to fair and equitable opportunities. So we want to make sure that our agencies serve those particularly vulnerable individuals. And so that's the goal.
And David, the other thing that Mona is probably leaving out is that, you know, I believe we're the 10th state in the nation to have an Office of New Americans, but a lot of these decisions that are being made all across Virginia and in state government often are not made with this equity lens, right? So for example, we just passed a law that just became effective January 1, where you can't hold your phone drive. So phone down, that campaign just started. Well, your viewers should know that Mona and Alaysia and I have been working very diligently with that campaign to make sure that we get these messages to vulnerable communities that say and believe and have justifiable fear of law enforcement. And so they believe that they're being over-policed. So Black and Brown communities, whether they're immigrant or non-immigrant communities, you know, they wanted their voices represented, and we were that bridge so that we could speak to immigrant groups, we can speak to African-American or Black groups and say, what are your questions? Let's make sure that we get messaging to you. So there's an example, a real world example where our office is serving all Virginians.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, Dr. Underwood and team. But at any time that you want to come back and talk more about the J, any time that you want to come back on and talk about the 5 things, that we will work out the time and we'll have you back again. But thanks so much to each of you for being on This Week in Virginia, and we look forward to working with you on the One Virginia.